Close to noon. And pause. We'll get started here in a minute or two after some more folks get in here. All right, good to get started here, Jim.
Let's do. Yep.
Let's do it. Switch to my camera. All righty. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our third Conversations in Transportation session in 2023. Thank you for joining us. We should have a good number of people with us today. I'll let Dr. Hummer introduce our guest in just a minute, but for those of you who have attended a number of these in the past, just the regular announcements today. Again, first, thanks for being with us. Second, the PDH and evaluation forms, we'll send those to you this afternoon or tomorrow morning. If you don't receive them within the next 24 hours, you can send me an email or send an email to operations@nixite.org and we'll get it sent along to you. Again, the best way to fill out your evaluation, we do have a link, a URL that we include in the email where you can just fill out your evaluation there. That really should be just about all I need to say. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Hummer. If I can find the button. There we go.
Yep. Good. Andy, thank you. And let me add my welcome to everybody joining us today. Glad you're here. Thank you. Thanks to the Strategic Initiative Council and the Young Members Council for sponsoring this activity. Adam and Ty, we really appreciate it. Our purpose is to educate our members by a series of conversations with transportation industry leaders. And I think we have a good one here for you today. Thanks to the Nixite Diamond and Gold sponsor companies who make this series possible and make really all of Nixite activity possible. We appreciate that sponsorship. And then a reminder to, if you've got a question for us, tap that into the Q&A area at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get some of those asked and answered toward the end of the hour. Appreciate that. So today we're talking rail transportation with Jason Orthner. Jason has been the NCDOT Rail Division Director since 2018. He's worked in rail project and program management for more than 26 years, having joined the rail division in 2000. He's responsible for leading statewide rail initiatives, including safety, planning, engineering, construction, freight and passenger programs. He serves on several national rail committees, including the State Amtrak Intercity Passenger Rail Committee Executive Team. Jason holds a degree in civil engineering from NC State and is a registered professional engineer and a certified public manager. So Jason, thanks for joining us today. And first question, real quick, how'd you get interested in rail?
Oh, great question. Well, I was if I go way back, I was interested in geography, I was interested in maps, and then interested in transportation because they took you places. And then I got my first model train set when I was 7. And I could say the rest was history, but I just got hooked on how a rail system works, the size of the vehicles, the way the system operates, and found a career to pursue that fed that interest. And here I am today.
It's a recipe for a pretty happy life, I think. I'm guessing I share not the rail part of it, but the idea of if you get to do for a living what you've always wanted to do, that's a pretty happy situation. So I
Right.
think that's true of a lot of rail people too. I think pick it up as 7-year-olds and get to do it until they're 70.
That's right. There's quite a community of railroad enthusiasts. It does help us in selling the product because you know it does have a special interest for a large number of folks that dreamed of trains as kids.
Right. Good. So let's talk about the rail division a little bit. The rail division has responsibilities in passenger and freight rail, right?
That's right.
So the Amtrak operates the passenger train. So what's the rail division role in passenger rail?
Sure. So we are amongst many states across the nation that sponsor what are called state-supported services. It's an Amtrak supported service, but it's set up through a federal sort of cost-sharing policy that was established in 2008 under the Passenger Rail Investment Infrastructure Act. So that policy allows states to enhance or provide services in addition to just Amtrak system trains, which are operated through their budget to meet the intercity passenger rail needs of communities. And so our role really is one in developing and dreaming of the system, creating a vision for the system, and then working with our partners to establish the funding of that system, and then working, you know, through various contractual means and methods to allow Amtrak as the operator of that system, because they have that those special abilities as part of their authorizing legislation or under the federal legislation in 1970, the ability to operate trains on freight railroad networks. So it's kind of a partnership where Amtrak assumes the role as the railroad and the DOT assumes the role basically as the program developer and sponsor.
So without you all, there would be passenger rail in North Carolina, but it'd be real bare bones and kind of just rolling through the state and not really serving us nearly as well.
Yeah, that's correct. So basically, yeah, the Amtrak was set up with basically a backbone system of long distance routes, but the growth in the system is really occurring in these state supported routes, where you're seeing, you know, connections of major city centers where the states have a significant interest, where the communities have interest, and there's interest across state lines.
Good. And then on the freight rail side, the freight rail companies own most of the tracks and operate the trains. So what's the role of your division of NCDOT in freight? Right.
So that it is interesting and unique that the freight railroad system is essentially private. We are dealing with generally private infrastructure. And that goes way back to sort of the way the history of the railroads were developed, which was, you know, sort of pre-highways. These rights of way, but for the railroads, were established by charter, generally in the state legislatures, and then the railroad assumed that asset, you know, as a private interest going forward, and ever since have, you know, looked to, you know, basically make money, gain a return on investment. You know, our division participates in ensuring that freight rail system is healthy, it operates well, it operates efficiently, and that operates safely as well. So we manage the components of the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, that are rail related. And so Class 1 railroads can actually, or projects in Class 1 railroads can actually be a part of developing the transportation network. We manage those projects. And then we have another program that is called the Freight Rail and Rail Crossing Safety Improvement Fund, which is really geared towards industry specific projects and the short line, very large short line network that we have in North Carolina to ensure their infrastructure operates efficiently and well as well. You know, the goal really with freight rail is to, you know, there's a lot of advantages to using freight rail, you know, for very heavy loads and commodities that need to operate over longer distances. it really takes a burden off the highway system for those loads. And so there is a value in supporting the freight railroads and ensuring that those goods move very efficiently.
Yeah, my interest over here in traffic management is for you all to get as many of those trucks off the road as possible. So yay.
We hear that a lot.
We appreciate it. And then there's this other thing called the North Carolina Railroad that actually owns the tracks right behind our building here. So are they part of your division, or what is that entity?
That's a good question. I will say unequivocally, no, they're not part of our division. And they would say even more emphatically the same. They are a private corporation with one shareholder, and that is the state of North Carolina. Well, they're one of the oldest corporations, if not the oldest corporations in North Carolina. And they were, interestingly enough, that corridor, which lies between Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, and then out towards Goldsboro and Morehead City, was one of the first railroads developed in our state, and was developed specifically for moving people and creating economic development. And so we work closely with the North Carolina River Company. They are a very strategic east-west corridor within our state. We run the predominance of our passenger trains over that corridor, and that we'll continue to work with them, as we do all the railroads, to ensure that their asset is used as effectively as possible.
Okay, that helps. And then last question, sort of about the organization here is, do you all have any role in the Charlotte light rail system or Great Smoky Mountains Tourist Railroad or any of the local or light rail systems?
No, it's great question. So really, we have our programs are natured on freight rail, passenger rail, and safety. So we do have oversight of all the grade crossings in the state, which are over 4,000. We also participate in safety programs such as overseeing safety of CATS, fixed rail or fixed guideway systems. That includes their light rail and their streetcar systems. So we have a role through what's called a state safety oversight program there, as well as overseeing some of the activity with their grade crossings as well. So we do. I mean, our program we're one of the most comprehensive rail divisions in the country. We're staffed at 47 full-time employees. We have a lot of also embedded contractors, because of all the number of programs that we have ongoing. And so you mentioned tourist railroads. I mean, they're technically part of the short line network in our state. A lot of them are common carriers, and so they do haul tourists, but they also haul freight. So our programs, are applicable to them as well, except for Tweetsie. We don't get involved with Tweetsie.
Okay. All right. They sort of stay on their own property and do their own thing. Okay, good. So what do the trends look like recently? Freight rail numbers, a few years ago, I thought I remembered that we were kind of at capacity through North Carolina and a couple of segments anyway. Is that still the case?
So it's a very interesting question. One of the things about railroad operations is that their operation is tied entirely to what they can do profitably, and so any traffic that they handle has got to meet the return on investment metrics. That said, freight carloads are very steady. You've got certain growth markets that are up. Obviously, one of the markets that's down is coal, because of the change in the energy industry and things there. But there's a lot of demand, and what we're seeing is some of the places where the class ones, which are the big railroads, were in the space of doing a lot of carload traffic, on branch lines, things like that. The short lines are picking up a lot of those lines, and because they have a different cost structure, they're allowed to make a move, in a much more profitable sense. So there are shifts in the industry, but it is balanced and steady. There's a lot of growth in the intermodal market. That's the containerized freight that moves between ship, truck and rail. And, so we're seeing investments in that infrastructure and a lot of movement in that way from a commercial goods standpoint.
Raising a couple of follow-ups here that you mentioned the coal down. Is there a cargo that's been up particularly to sort of replace the coal movements?
So, yeah, I think specifically it's intermodal. That is the sort of the replacement. That is sort of the vision, I think, for a lot of where the capacity can be used, and you're seeing that in the traffic base. But there are other sectors also that the railroads do really well in. Hauling other bulk commodities, chemicals, as well as commercial goods, various aggregates. Construction materials and things like that move very, very well over rail, and they do very well in that business.
Good. And then this is off script, but let me lob it in anyway. I remember as a young one in Indiana, they made a big deal about the double stack containers in that part of the world, but we do not have that here. Then there's no chance we'll ever get it, right?
So double stack, actually, we it's been clearance. It's been bridge clearances that have really kind of held it back, or specific clearances. Most of the network now is double stack cleared, and we are seeing that is the predominant intermodal traffic on the railroads. As you can imagine, stacking them too high, weight is not an issue on the railroads, but their ability, but train length is, and so they like to. So double stack allows them to haul really double the amount of containers that you would in a single level move with basically the same train. So you can haul 300 containers, basically 300 trucks on one train, and we see it on a day-to-day basis.
We do. Okay, I'll look for it. Maybe just missed it, but okay, good. So the trends in passenger rail. If I hear the headlines correctly, we're doing really well. If there was a dip during COVID, we've come back really strong out of that. Am I catching that correctly?
You're exactly right. So we in the first quarter this year, or I think it was actually last year's, we were, I believe it was 13% over 2019, which was our first full year prior to the pandemic. So we were already seeing signs that we were coming out even stronger than our pre-pandemic numbers. We had our best first quarter this year, beating 2019 by 30% for January through March. Had our second best month ever in April, and our best May ever numbers. Overall, we're seeing a significant growth in the market for passenger rail. We are actually adding an additional train pair next month, July 10th. To accommodate, some of the markets we're seeing and additional demand. So the future is very bright. It's definitely, this is a service that people are using and do want to use, to get between city center and town center across our state.
So that'll be a fifth round trip, Raleigh to
Right.
Charlotte every day.
So 10 trains a day, 5 in each direction between Raleigh and Charlotte. That's we're not stopping there. Obviously, we have a vision for a statewide network, but that is our next incremental step, is to provide that level of service.
Who rides the trains these days? What are the demographics of your kind of typical travelers?
It's a great question. The train really is a microcosm of everything in North Carolina. So we have a lot of we just have a tremendous cross section of population. It's folks visiting family, it's students, it's folks traveling over the longer distances for business because they can be productive while they're on the train working. It's folks visiting or needing to get to medical appointments, and everything in between. And it cuts across all the economic demographics as well. We have a huge just population all the way from lower income to higher income, and everything in between, using the train service.
Good. And the amenities on the trains have improved in the last few years, right? I mean, Reliable internet was a big deal a few years ago. I think that's pretty routine now.
Yeah, we've solved it. We have one of the better Wi-Fi systems of trains across the country. Every train has its own, every car has its own Wi-Fi brain, so and insider connection. So we're handling a lot of traffic. That's a big deal. Outlets at every seat, and obviously food service through right now through vending and available coffee and water. But I think one of the things that folks really like about the train is basically the space. You just have a lot of space on the train that you don't have in other transportation modes. You can get up, move around. The seating arrangements are flexible. They've got table seating. You've got individual seats. It's just a very comfortable way to travel.
Yeah, good. And I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but the stations have improved a great deal through the, I don't know, last 30 years for sure. But to me, the Charlotte station was sort of the one fly in the ointment there, but we're getting that fixed, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we've had a long program of improving stations. It was really the vision of the folks in this division for a very, very long time that the gateway to the system, we wanted it to be a very positive experience for the passenger. So we've improved, somewhere between 16 and 20 stations throughout the state. A lot of them are historic, iconic stations, and some are adaptive reuse. Like many folks are familiar with the Raleigh Union Station, which is an adaptive reuse. But one of the hallmarks of our system. I mean, people come from all across the country to see. It's really an amazing station. But you're right, Charlotte Gateway Station. Right now, that is our single most, this is the next big thing project, because it really changes the location where we board passengers in Charlotte, which is just outside of the business district, not in a really good accessible area, and not really a destination unto itself. Just an older facility that needs to be replaced. We're putting the new station right in Uptown Charlotte as a destination, including commercial, retail, residential, all the transportation modes in a single location, including streetcar access and eventual light rail access, and then merged into a facility that's going to be multi-story, multi-block. It is going to be an incredible facility. Our division finished all of the track side infrastructure. We managed the construction, the design and construction of that, which included the platform, the tracks, the signals, bridges over all the city streets, a new connection to our maintenance facility in Charlotte. We finished all that last year on time and on budget in October. And so now the city is working with a private developer to bring to bear this amazing new destination that will be the Charlotte Gateway Station.
And when do we cut a ribbon?
Well, we're hoping, my hope is 2026. We have certainly the developers are motivated, where we hope to have people boarding right there at an iconic station in 2026. Yeah,
that's going to be a great improvement. Other station projects across the state, anything else going on?
Right. So we are working with several communities. We've got projects at Kannapolis and Salisbury to do some improvements to add a platform to both tracks there. There's also a project in the STIP for a new station at Hillsborough, as well as a project at Lexington, working with the city of Lexington on a station, and also in Harrisburg with the North Carolina Railroad Company, which is just north of Charlotte. We have a vision for a bigger network in the state. Federal Railroad Administration has what's called a corridor ID program that would expand service to places like Asheville and Wilmington and Fayetteville and other places, around the state. With that, I need to mention Winston-Salem too. With that comes more stations and more improvements to be made. So we will continue to look for iconic ways to develop these stations using both historical structures and new adaptive reuse or new structures.
Very good. Yep. Remind everybody to, if you got a question, type it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We appreciate that, and handle some of those toward the end of the hour. Extensions to Asheville and to Wilmington have also Sort of been on and off news over the last couple of years. What's the latest on those?
So we received some money, some funding through the SPNR program, the State Planning and Research Funding, to kind of re-up our feasibility studies for those two routes. They're among the most requested routes that don't currently exist, service connecting Raleigh and Wilmington and service connecting Salisbury and Asheville. And so we have completed our draft feasibility study, our updated draft feasibility study for Salisbury to Asheville, working through the key stakeholders on that project to make sure we get those I's dotted and T's crossed, and then we'll issue that as a final report soon. And then we're following a similar process with the service between Raleigh and Wilmington. Both of those quarters, in addition to 10 others, were submitted to FRA's quarter ID program. So we should hear from FRA on what quarters are selected under that program late this summer, early fall, and that would provide a new federal pipeline for development of those quarters and then funding of those quarters.
Okay. So a ways to go, but tangible progress.
Very much so.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Speaking of Wilmington, a question came in from my colleague Jeff here in Mobility and Safety about the expected impact from the Port of Wilmington's navigation channel expansion on freight rail. There's already a lot of freight trains in and out of Wilmington, but they're going to get more then, right?
That's right. The NC Ports is one of our biggest partners, really, in the system. You just think about the history of our ports that go back really to the beginning of the railroads. We've basically been connected with them, since the beginning. They are making, particularly the Port of Wilmington, is making significant investments in their intermodal capacity, their ability to handle, containerized freight. As you mentioned, obviously stuff that they're doing to the Cape Fear Channel to handle the bigger ships. Their port side infrastructure, including new cranes. They're really redeveloping their intermodal rail yard and capacity there for throughput. And they have launched they've launched in the last several years services that are connecting Wilmington to Charlotte with direct intermodal, as well as Wilmington to our new CCX facility, the new facility we completed in Rocky Mount. With destination of those products, not just for the North Carolina market, but also all the way to the Midwest. So a lot of projects going on there. We have projects in the STIP to make dramatic improvements to specifically the Wilmington port, improving safety and speed of trains getting to and from the port through, it kind of takes a route through the city there, as well as the route all the way from the port to Charlotte. We're making a lot of capacity improvements to the railroad network, as well as safety improvements to grade separations, crossing closures, things like that. So heavily invested with them. Our FRIXI program also supports individual projects on both ports at Morehead City and Wilmington. So yeah, they're great partners, and we love to see the volume increase at both those facilities.
Good. Kind of a mutually reinforcing cycle there.
It really is.
The legend back in the day was that we needed to restore the second rail connection to Wilmington to really, have much more efficient operations out of there. I suppose that would happen if we restored the passenger rail service, right?
So it certainly provides opportunities. We're focused on that very short route. That over the portion of quarter that we own, the Wallace to Castle Hayne, for that, as you mentioned, that passenger rail service. It's a very direct route. Actually, it's the oldest railroad in the state, dating back to 1840. Also one of the straightest. Certainly helps with expediting people and goods over that portion of quarter. But that is certainly something that we are looking at and working with our partners at CSX and the communities along the way, to see how we can leverage, that really important asset to move people and goods.
And we did get a question from a attendee about expansion plans to serve the port at Morehead City. So anything else you can add there?
Well, you know, we've done lots of projects with the ports. We've done improvements to the Basque Bridge that, you know, that connects Radio Island to Morehead City. We've done improvements on port, you know, there at Morehead City. It's really more of a break bulk, you know, type facility than it is intermodal, but still critically important. Working with our partners at NS, the North Carolina Railroad Company, and the city of Morehead City to improve safety at the grade crossing situation there, and other types of upgrades. So yeah, there's focus at both ports.
Good. So I want to make sure we've got enough time for the really headline item, at least to me, is the S line, Raleigh to Richmond, and of course maybe south of Raleigh as well. When can I buy my ticket and ride direct fast Raleigh to Richmond?
Well, to give, I mean, I think many folks have heard this, but to give some scope of what we're talking about, we don't, you know, right now, North Carolina has a burgeoning system. We've got a developing system. It's very successful. Virginia also has a very successful system. Right now, those systems are only connected by one train, and that is the Carolinian, which is a single northbound, southbound train over a very circuitous route that goes, you know, south first down, you know, to Selma, and then makes a turn and goes back north, and then enters into a very heavily congested freight corridor. So what we're looking at with the S line is something to really, you know, connect our states and ultimately the entire Southeast with something that's high capacity, high reliability, and high speed. Those three components really are what define what the S line is. It is a new, extremely modern, you know, interstate railroad connection that allows our systems to connect together and then feed the rail system that we're developing here in North Carolina, by giving a plethora of destinations for folks to get to, not just in state, but, you know, out of state as well, which is, we see a lot of, the farther folks want to go, the more volume you generate within the system. So it is a strategic project. It has the interest, obviously, of Amtrak, significant interest of Amtrak. It has significant interest of the Federal Railroad Administration, as well as our partners across state lines. We've been funded. We finished NEPA on the project. We've been funded through grants for 30% preliminary engineering, which a lot of the consultant industry is now engaging with us on. But we're not stopping there. We're looking at building it and now in phases. So we've submitted a grant for the first segment from Raleigh up to Wake Forest, which is arguably the most complex segment because of the urbanized area. But then we're looking at a cycle of additional grants that will build it in phases as we go north. Now, my leadership says we want it done by 2029. If all the funding drops out of the sky, we're successful somehow, then, you know, that is obviously an aggressive schedule. But, you know, moving these components of the project along as fast as possible is our goal. And getting the Virginia side connected to the North Carolina side, so we have a new through route that avoids all the freight congestion and the slower speeds of the current route and allows us the capacity is the goal as quickly as possible.
And Virginia's keeping up with us?
Right. So Virginia has a very robust program. A lot of their focus has been on fixing the capacity components that are in the other part of the corridor from Raleigh up to, from Richmond up to DC. So they're working on some major projects there. They're also connected with us at the hip on this project, since day one. So yeah, between those two segments, both all reaching south to North Carolina, as well as doing the necessary work, because the trains that originate in North Carolina have to run over the Virginia segment of track. I-95 doesn't just go to North Carolina, go through North Carolina and stop in Virginia. It's a similar situation. We've got to make improvements in both states to have an effective system. But if we do it properly, then we have basically a high capacity, high speed system from Boston all the way down into Charlotte, and then ultimately further than that.
How high is speed from Raleigh to Richmond?
So the design standard right now is at 110. We're going to look at also possibly in certain segments up to 125. it will be dramatically different than the current system.
Yeah, yeah. Good. That sounds to me like a game changer as far as that Raleigh will be connected to the Northeast Corridor. Is that, are you all seeing that in the business as well?
Absolutely. If you can just imagine, a contiguous, train infrastructure that can go over that distance at very, reliably, at high speed and very efficiently. That is a game changer, I think for us, for sure.
By train, I can make a meeting in DC and back in a single day, for instance.
That is the goal. Yes.
Yeah, we're out a few years, but will the Amtrak through trains probably reroute then to use the new track through Raleigh?
Yeah, certainly some of them will. Because once we make that investment, they're going to have interest in the most efficient route possible, which means not burdening the freight railroad with additional trains to the extent they can. So we expect some services to move over to the new route. They'll operate faster at higher reliability. Some services will remain because of the communities they need to continue to serve on the existing route. So there's a blend of these different types of things as the network stabilizes, but certainly having a publicly owned corridor that there's a lot of control over for both speed and reliability and capacity will generate lots of opportunities.
Yeah, good. One more question came in from an attendee on future passenger service, and that question is, will we extend to Greenville, North Carolina?
So Greenville is on the map. I mentioned we submitted 12 corridors. There is a corridor linking Greenville to Raleigh as part of that map. So yes.
Okay. Good. We just got interstate to Greenville within the last couple of years. So on passenger rail,
Right.
welcome aboard. Let's talk a little bit more about the Raleigh to Charlotte, the probably key corridor in the state. Certainly the goal was a sealed corridor. So what does that mean for our audience, please?
Seal corridor is actually a term that defined one of our most original sort of programs, and that was to find a way to comprehensively address grade crossing safety through a program of sort of short, middle, and long-term improvements. Began in the 90s. The program started with trying to find ways to reduce violations at crossings through by employing active warning devices as opposed to passive crossbucks and things like that. Deploying more advanced technology like 4-quadrant gates that seal the whole, that basically close the whole corridor to vehicles. But it doesn't stop there. It's looking at the comprehensive solutions to also close and grade separate the network. We have, I think we've closed over 330 crossings in the state, since the 90s. There's a lot more on the books now because there's so many grade separation projects in the state transportation improvement program. That is kind of where we are. A grade certainly for the higher volume, high speed corridors, grade separation is the best way to avoid collisions and to create reliability in the system. If you can imagine, railroads don't have detours to move train traffic if a collision occurs. And so a collision at a grade crossing basically has a tremendous impact on the rail system. So in addition to the safety aspects of sealing the corridor, there is a real operational benefit as well.
Good. Travel time, Raleigh to Charlotte now one way is just over 3 hours.
Right.
What's the goal? What's the ultimate, do you think?
So our new schedule that will be in effect in July 10th to be exact. That's that Monday will start. actually provides a couple different products for folks. One is, an under 3-hour schedule, which would be the first time that we've had that because of the number of stops. As we've grown the number of trains in the system, some of the lower volume stations can continue to have robust service. But we're going to see a few trains that are more limited stop that allow those travelers that are going over longer distances to get there quicker. We're not stopping there. We've been working on travel time improvements really since day one on this corridor. It used to be 4 hours to get over the railroad, and unreliably. I'll mention that to one that it's a lot better now. And so in addition to that schedule, we are improving. We're continuing to improve curves on the railroad. We're going to continue to add capacity and look at the overall functionality of the railroad to help it operate faster. So it is a combination of a lot of different things we're looking at. But now that we're kind of in this we're getting to a more mature place with the program, we're looking at ways to offer a product that's a little bit faster for folks.
And you mentioned the reliability, very important as well. How is the on-time performance, let's say, of Raleigh to Charlotte?
So it's, we are working. What I will say is this, our target is like 70 to 80% on time, and that is right on time. That's our goal. Most trains finish their journey within 10 to 15 minutes of the scheduled time. What I will say is this: Norfolk Southern, because they run dozens and dozens of freight trains, has a tremendous responsibility, in trying to weave what will now be, a lot of passenger trains, through the system. So we're working with them on operational changes and improvements that'll keep those trains out of the way of each other. And we're going to do that through capacity improvements, but also operational improvements. So it is something we have a tremendous amount of focus on. The shared system is obviously unique in the sense that a lot of places we're single track, and we have to weave things around each other. But I think with all that, we operate very, very, very well.
Okay. Good. Back up on the Northeast corridor, do we have a stake in any of the sort of mega projects up that way? The tunnel through Baltimore, the tunnels under the Hudson River? Do we have a rooting interest in seeing those projects come to fruition?
Well, going back to my earlier comments about, the fact that we're looking at a contiguous system, that connects the Northeast, really through Virginia to North Carolina, ultimately, further south. We have interest in those projects. And the states, and Amtrak talk with each other quite frequently about, the benefits and our sort of our symbiotic relationship and a lot of things. I mentioned Long Bridge in Virginia. That's a critically important project to us too. It's a very large project as well, to basically double the capacity across the Potomac River between Virginia and Washington, at a very key bottleneck right now. So yeah, we're interested in seeing that infrastructure improved. A lot of what's happening in the Northeast corridor and from Washington north is modernizing that corridor that really has had infrastructure in place for 120 years or so, that is in desperate need of modernization. So we're supportive of all those efforts.
For our attendees here today, nobody should miss an opportunity to have a conversation with a leader about one of those projects. They're in our interest. Good. I have a question on this, and somebody asked it, one of our attendees as well. Does the rail division have an interest in commuter rail? If so, what does that look like?
That's good. That's a great question. So for the commuter rail efforts in our state, we have certainly been engaged. Commuter rail, and for those that don't know the differences between different types of services, it helps to have a definition. The space that we operate in as far as state support services is called intercity passenger rail. It's really connecting the centers of cities and centers of towns together. Generally, station spacing is in the 15-mile or more range. That is definitively not commuter rail. Commuter rail is a system that is historically brought suburban or outlying areas into an urban core to handle tremendous congestion resulting from peak hour traffic. So trains, during peak hour that follow a more traditional, work schedule, in-office work schedule. The triangle effort, connecting the communities in the triangle, is along those lines. But I think that a lot of these systems are looking for more throughout the day service. So whether they're still a true commuter rail or if they're more like a regional rail, that's something to kind of be defined. We support those projects by looking at, because we're experts in railroad capacity and infrastructure development, as well as road safety. And to the extent that those types of projects have to interlace with, our intercity rail trains, it's very important that they're well coordinated. And so we do get involved. And I think we'll continue to have involvement in those types of projects going forward. And then you have light rail, which is an entirely separate system, doesn't operate in the national rail network at all. So, and I've mentioned our role there really is in a safety oversight.
Okay, good. Yeah, the commuter rail for Raleigh, there's an active proposal out there now. As I understand it, it's basically building tracks next to the existing tracks. Will not be able to run over the existing tracks. So does that sort of free up? That creates capacity then, so the Amtrak and the freight trains can keep doing their thing.
Right. Yeah. So I think the proposal, and this is true for a lot of commuter rail, is to build, add capacity to the existing network that is both freight and intercity passenger rail, and share that capacity amongst the services. The challenge becomes, commuter rail likes closer spacing of stations, or for its type of network, so it tends to operate slower. So that can be one thing that has to be a consideration in looking at the capacity of the overall network.
Good. We got a question from Melissa on safety, was on my list as well. That one of the big issues I think that you all face regarding rail safety these days is pedestrian trespassing. So what's, she asked, it's a good question. Anything new in that area regarding how you can address trespassing? We
have done a lot of, let me just first say this, it is a problem. It is a significant problem. And one that the industry, our office and the industry spends a lot of time trying to tackle how to fix it. You would think that it would be easy to tell folks you don't belong on railroad tracks and really please stay out of the way of trains. But we have yet to crack that nut. We've done research into behavioral, sort of habits where folks cross, ways to mitigate crossings, by channelizing, to a bridge or something like that. But the messaging is I think is equally as important. So we're doing a lot of educating, starting with even young children, just make sure that they're aware that, tracks are private property, that only trains belong on them. And to look at trains from a distance. Don't walk on tracks, don't take pictures on tracks, don't do Instagram posts on tracks, don't do selfies on tracks, things like that. Trains are quiet, they come up quickly. It's really surprising that folks think that that you'll know and you'll hear it and all that stuff. So the best message is stay off the tracks. We're working, diligently on that. But we've kind of, stabilized at a around a couple dozen fatalities a year, at least, with, maybe double the number of incidents, and it's tragic. And it's avoidable. So we'll continue to do the hard work. Thanks.
And Angela asked sort of the reverse question. You mentioned trains are quiet, and her question was anything new or any recent legislation on quiet zone designation?
Well, this is my opinion, I think, obviously FRA has issued quiet zone rule that does allow, trains to, if the appropriate safety measures are put in place through a very comprehensive analysis, you can reduce horn noise. That has contributed to trains being quieter and has contributed to folks being less aware that they're coming. It's just another component of, the overall messaging that, staying off the tracks is absolutely incredible, is absolutely the most important thing that any pedestrian can do.
Good. I wanted to ask you about derailments. Of course, the big one in Ohio a few months ago, but just this past week in Montana, I don't remember any big derailment incident in North Carolina within my time here. Maybe you do, but are we lucky in this regard, or do we sort of have a more robust program to try to prevent those tragic cases?
Well, I will say that there's very infrequent to have anything of substance in North Carolina. Obviously derailments that occur are usually of the very minor type that happen in a yard because of too heavy a couple, or there's something that went wrong in a move within a yard. So that's the bulk of the incidents. I think the awareness, I think that the fact that it's in the news has brought awareness to something that is a relatively infrequent happening, but it does happen on a national scale. We have operating thousands and thousands of trains daily. There is always the opportunity for something. Probably a similar statement could be made about highway infrastructure, in the instance that happened there. But what I will say is this, safety is something that the railroads take as a bottom line issue, and is absolutely critical, to them, maintaining their business. And, our interactions, on safety indicate that has always been a top priority. There is legislation at the federal level that's going to, resulting from some of the recent incidents that will probably play an even bigger role, in improving rail safety. But as on a whole, the system is extremely safe. We handle our passengers with the utmost safety. In 32 years, never major incident, to involve, fatality of a passenger. So I think the main thing is that, that the industry will continue to look at this. We've talked to our partners at the freight railroads. They're committed, to safety. The communication is good and getting even better, with the agencies that have to respond to incidents. We'll continue to make sure the network operates as safely as it possibly can.
Very good. What I remember is, I'm not clear on any, or maybe it depends on which route we're talking about, whether the safest way to get there is by bus, by plane, or by train. But any of those three beats the heck out of driving. So the safest way to get there is probably the train, or it's a close competitor anyway. So good. A couple other questions have come in from the participants. We appreciate it. Nathan wants to know what the scale of your model railroad was when you were a child.
HO is what got me into this. I'll say that, so for those that know what that is, I currently have an N scale that my kids play on. So there you go.
Angela would like a map showing the current routes. I think, I don't know if she means freight or passenger, but I guess direct her to your website.
Yeah, I think you'll find certainly on the passenger rail system, ncbytrain.org has got maps of our route structure, and I believe on our rail division webpage on the ncdot.gov, we also have some maps there that show the railroad system in North Carolina.
Very good. Angela also wants to know the annual budget. Let's say for NC Rail Division. Keep it there.
Yeah, so, our operating budget, which includes, our major programs like FRIXI and the train operations, safety, and general operational, type stuff and support of all the programs around the state, is about, we were appropriated between around 50 million a year, for all those different programs. Obviously, we are tied in with the State Transportation Improvement Program because a lot of our staff is engineering, and we support both highway projects and the development of highway projects as well as rail projects in the STIP. So that's outside of that funding. But yeah, that's kind of in the range of.
Okay. Very good. We got just a couple minutes for a couple wrap up questions here, and I always like to end with sort of looking out into the future. For the students or younger IT members listening in today, what would be your advice about starting a career in rail? Obviously, your degree in civil engineering from NC State helped and got you to where you are, but that or what else, or how does one get started in the rail business?
That's a great question. Certainly, I was interested in the technical aspects of rail, and so I went the engineering route. That is a route that leads to lots of different opportunities in the rail business. I think there's more opportunities in rail now than there ever have been. And it goes across all of the industry sort of spectrum, which includes the railroads themselves and includes the suppliers, the contractors, the different support industries, that enable the system to work. All of that is a burgeoning industry. But you can go into it through, not just through engineering, you can go in through it through other aspects, all the typical aspects, whether it's through a business degree or law or really anything, computer science. All those roads lead to the opportunity, to really affect the system and lead the system. I'd advocate for engineers because we have a lot to build. Certainly one of our hopes is that we continue to see rail play a big part of surface transportation funding, for those programs going forward, which will lead to more opportunities in this field. We need more experts in railroad engineering, just like we have a lot of experts in roadway design and highway engineering and highway terms. We need a lot of engineers in this field as well. So there's a plug.
Yeah, no, that's what I was expecting to hear. So that's good. Good. There are, as far as I know, there's not many university courses in railroad engineering or degree programs in railroad engineering. That's it's kind of thing where like you got a general civil engineering degree and then got trained once you get hired. Yeah,
it's true. I know that in your former institution at NC State, there's been interest there's been some programs both by Professor Finley, Professor List, and a few others that have really tried to get that program started there. There are other national programs, but you're right. I think that we need to start having a focus on some of the programs moving from just from a highway centric transportation engineering to one that looks at all the different modes, and because we're going to need all of them to really get people moving into the future. And speaking of that, just in our last 30 seconds or so here, you're generally optimistic. Rail is doing well, better than ever, here to stay. Finish the thought, please. Oh yeah, I believe so. I certainly think that the rail system is certainly it's being used, but with all the right reasons. The issue with any transportation system is that public policy drives how the network is developed. And we saw that, in the original development of the railroad system, but that it was linked into heavily by the leaders of policymakers when it was first developed. That changed over to highway and aviation. So I think that, if as long as we've got balanced public policy on how we utilize these different, systems and tools, we're going to see a bright future, for the system.
Jason, this is great. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. I've learned a lot over the last hour. I'm sure attendees have as well. For folks on the line here, don't forget to complete your evaluation for your PDH certificate. And we will see you in August with another conversation in transportation. In the meantime, keep talking transportation. Andy, back to you for any closing thoughts.
I think you covered it there. Again, we're going to send out the PDH evaluation later today. Thanks everybody for attending, and we plan to have you back with us again in August.
Very good. Take care, y'all. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Joe.